It's not like you're winning stuff, is it?
So do you know what? When it comes to standards, it's like I don't want to be in the Europa League, but I'd rather be in the Europa League trying to win it than in nothing at all. I don't understand this logic of not wanting to be in it, but at the same time, like, I make you right. The start of the season, I've been saying the manager's got to go for a while now, based on multiple factors. The biggest factor has been what he's been saying publicly. We've gone through it on many shows. The whole, I've come here for a challenge. I'm not going to try and play myself.
Like I said he did, yeah? Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, I said he was a compulsive liar, didn't I? I said it all season. And you said, oh, well, no, not necessarily, you know, blah, blah, blah. Shows.
So I think when it comes to the lying side of things, there is elements of, at no point did I ever hear him say before, I'm coming here and I'm bringing my style of football and I will be implementing and getting the team playing a certain way. And now he's gone back of it. He has definitely said things like, I'm really happy with this squad, but we know he's trying to sell people, so he's not. And I stand by, I'm not going to change my stance on that. I want my managers at times to be coy. I want them to be professional. I want them to hold back from saying certain things. In the same way that when he come out and said what he said about Sancho, I said that is something that, although it may be the truth, I don't want that coming out publicly. I think you have to be very careful. I don't think it's a one size sort of fits all. You know, sometimes you want people to be a bit coy. But as soon as he come out and said he isn't trying to implement the style of football that most people rated him for, most people, whether you thought he was a great manager or not, the way Ajax played football, people viewed it and said, it's very modern. They move the ball well. They've got a good shape. And I expected more of that to come into Man United. At the same time, irrespective of projects, irrespective of progression, to lose 11 of your opening 22, 23 games, to concede like we do, to have a lack of shape, to see the midfield being run through and not being addressed, to get battered by Bournemouth at home. And for me, United fans will hate this. It was 3-0. It should have been 4-0. I mean, so that handball at the end, yes, by the letter of the law, it gets disallowed. But if he didn't touch his hand, he's going to control that anyway and score. We got battered at home by Bournemouth. And I think when you're a club like Man United, when you have spent what you have spent, irrespective for a moment of player power, irrespective for a moment of the ownership, I don't think your job is tenable when you lose that many games and when you get battered at home by a team like Bournemouth. I think that there should...
Well, I actually disagree with that, sorry.
Okay, what do you disagree with?
Well, he's been in the job 18 months, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in the first 18 months, and it is pretty much 18 months to the day, there or thereabouts, in the first 18 months, he's won you a trophy, tick, done. He qualified you for the Champions League, tick, done. And he is currently sat 6th in the table, tick, done. In the first 18 months under Arteta, who also came into a club that was apparently in disarray as well, first 18 months, won a trophy, tick, done. Didn't qualify us for Europe, X, and finished 8th. So not only is Ten Hag getting beaten by teams that he shouldn't be being beaten by, the Bournemouths of this world, the Crystal Palaces of this world. Let's just rewind back to December 2020, when Mikel Arteta had us 15th in the league for 5 games in a row, losing to Aston Villa 3-0 at the Emirates for the first time at our ground by 3 goals or more since 1928. Losing to Leicester at home, same month, Wolves at home, same month, Burnley at home, same month. And all 3 of them were for the first time since the 70s. Yeah, we can go back to all of the negative records Mikel Arteta broke. And at no point in that 18-month period under Mikel Arteta did he have a 72% win percentage, which is what your manager had at a certain point. I think it was the first 50 games as manager. I may be wrong. It may be 60 or 25 games, whatever. But he never had a 72% record. And it's irrelevant whether these people are saying it's his first job or not. The premise is still the same. You've taken over a football club. You've both sat next to a manager who is still managing and the greatest manager in the league in the world right now. So surely you've learned stuff. Yes, Ten Hag's won a couple of trophies, fair enough, over in Holland. But Mikel Arteta came into a job that was a mess, won a trophy. So is your manager. Mikel Arteta didn't qualify us for Europe. Your manager has, hence why you're in it tonight. He's currently sat in 6th. At this point, within a year of Mikel Arteta being in the job, because he got it in December 19, a whole year later, he had us 15th for 5 games in a row, and Tommy Tuchel then signed for Chelsea. He then ended up finishing 8th. I don't see what the issue is, because on one hand, you can't say it's a process, a project. It takes time. He needs all of his own players. You know, it was a toxic culture. You have to change the mentality. The ownership's not great because our ownership wasn't at the time. And just because we spent a few quid since, yeah, doesn't mean that they're still great owners, does it? It just means that they trust in their process, maybe. Yeah, your owners are spending money. Yes, you're a bigger football club, so you can spend more money. Yeah, because you have a bigger income than us. So you can factually spend more money than Arsenal, and have done. So I don't see why you in particular are now not trusting a process on a manager after 18 months, when you've been throwing it in my face about my manager, yeah, for years, when your manager is actually statistically outperforming our manager at the same timescale they have had their job at this point.
So I understand that challenge, but we had this conversation a few weeks ago when you said, why do I want Gareth Southgate sacked, but also think that Arteta has progressed Arsenal? And it's because I think about, I don't look at every club, every manager in a sort of monolith way where I assess them all in the same way, because the circumstances, the nuance and the context at every single club is very, very different. So if there had been a new process started at Man United, if we were trying to implement the style of play that Ten Hag is famed for, if that was happening, my view of the situation would be different. That doesn't mean I wouldn't be criticizing the defeats. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't be criticizing the falling out with these players, but it's every single factor that comes into the situation. And that's a big part for me. So if you go back and look at when I've changed my mind, that's it. Now, if, for instance, our football was improving, but we weren't quite getting the results, there's something to hang on to. If he was moving out, if the club was allowing him to move out the players he was falling out with, and the football was continuing to improve, there's something to hold on to. You could say, I know it's bad right now, but I think this is going to become better. When it comes to the situation with Erik Ten Hag, I don't believe that he is going to improve it. Now, the only area that I think I could be wrong in when it comes to that opinion is if the new part owners come in and say, do you know what, Ten Hag, we want you to play more the Ajax way. Forget what you've been told by the previous people of trying to do this Ollie Ball, United DNA thing that's dated and doesn't work. And also, we're going to clear out all the players you've had a problem with. Anyone who doesn't want to work for you, we're going to get behind you. There is the potential for that to turn things around at Manchester United, but that's pie in the sky because the new owners are not in yet, and we have no idea if they're going to do it. So I'm judging. Well, no, but so the way the new ownership is going to work is they are taking. And we have to wait again. We have to wait and see the nuance in this. So I don't know until they're in, but the strong reports are they will have full control over the football operation. So from a football standpoint, it's new owners. It's a brand new board. All the people currently on this company's house register have been removed today. New names are going to be put on. So that's the only way I see him turning it around. But I personally think the quicker way of them turning this club around is to do all those things I've mentioned, plus potentially move on a manager as well, because it takes a lot longer to sell a squad.
It was only a couple of weeks ago, Terry, you sat on it saying that if you sack the manager, we'll be here again in 2 years. Yes. And Jim Ratcliffe was already coming in then. Yes. So why the turnaround? Not furthermore, not only that.
There's no turnaround.
When you're saying that potentially he could turn it around if he gets out the players he wants, well, isn't he done that with some of the players? He's got rid of David De Gea. He's got rid of Ronaldo. He's been Jadon Sancho. Yeah, he's been, and hold on. Yeah, he's in a way, because the club and himself as well, he's got to take some of the blame for Harry Maguire still being there, right? Because he could have binned him and put him in the reserves, like we've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily on him to negotiate a deal. Yeah, yes, the money spent, you could say, has been spent on his watch. But again, we said last week, he's not in the negotiating room when Man United negotiated 90 million for Anthony. So when you say money in, yeah, that's cool, but it's not just necessarily him. He should have more of a hand in, well, actually, if we're going to waste that money on him, maybe we should go and get him because we know the budget. However, you're saying he's got to, if he gets the players out that he wants out. Well, Rome weren't built in a day, Terry. It took Klopp 4 years. It's a process. He's been there 18 months. He's only had 3 transfer windows. How are you expecting him to overhaul the squad? Because you keep telling me every week you can't just overhaul squads just like that. And especially when it's a Man United squad that has loads and loads of players, if not all of them, over 100 grand a week wages. Wait. Over 100 grand a week wages. You've got Varane and Casemiro's combined weekly salary is more than all of the Ajax squad combined. So it's very difficult to get rid of a Varane and a Casemiro because not only are they on a 300 plus a week, nobody apart from Saudi is probably going to come in and spend that money on them, considering their age, right? So it's very hard for them to get rid of them players, right? When we're trying to get rid of players on that level of wage, we had to rip up their contracts, Aubameyang, Mesut Ozil, etc. We had to let our record signing literally leave for next to nothing. Well, I think he left for nothing in the end, and we just got him out of the club. We got rid of 11 players on terminated contracts, just ripping them up. So you're saying the only way you could potentially keep him in a job is see how Ratcliffe does when he comes in, right? But then for the last few weeks, you've been saying, get him out, get him out. But for the last few weeks, you've been saying, well, Ratcliffe might turn this into something. He's going to be in charge of football operations. So why are you not backing Ratcliffe to turn it around with Ten Hag then?
Okay, so I can. There's a lot to unpack there. So let's go back to what you said at the beginning. I said if we sack the manager in 2 years, we're going to be back here, of course, because there's layered thinking going on here. Me thinking the manager needs to go doesn't correlate to that fixes Man United. It's a separate conversation. Multiple elements need to be fixed at Man United at the same time, and I believe one of them is the removal of the manager. My biggest reason for thinking that, like I've already said, is so far he's not trying to implement the style of play that I expected him to. So for that reason, that's my bias. Well, but for me, when you say he hasn't got his
players, that's what Arteta needs.
Let me finish. But they're different conversations, they're different situations.
Well, they're not the same thing.
They're not the same thing. Man United.
The guys come into a toxic dressing room.
Let me finish my answers because I need to go through these. So that's why I want him gone. Is the biggest thing he is not trying to implement his style of football. We can all see this. We can see it with the lack of improvement in our shape, how we are passing the ball, and in our structure. And I don't think he's going to be able to turn that around. Now, what I said about Ratcliffe coming in is I could be wrong and he could turn it around and he could prove me wrong. And new ownership comes in, they change everything that's going on at the football club, and maybe the team starts to improve. Then I'd hold my hands up and go, wow, he did turn it around. But in my view, with the way he's fallen out with players, who I don't believe will all be sold too quickly, with him not trying to implement his style, I think that coupled with some really bad results, some really horrendous football that we've played, I believe all of that collectively is enough to see him go. I think the best way to fix the club from this point and moment we find ourselves in, with all the problems internally, everything that needs to be done, I think new recruitment team, new board, new manager and coaching staff, and then as quickly as you can, you sell the players that need to go or tear up their contracts like you mentioned and bring new people in. I think we need a complete restart where we're removing everything possible from the previous regime that have run this into the ground over the last 10 years. That for me is what I would personally do. Now, I understand your point that you see similarities between the situations. And hindsight's obviously a very, very lucrative commodity. There were times during Mikel Arteta's situation where a lot of us thought I couldn't believe he was still in the job, losing lots of games, sitting 8th in the league, really, really struggling. And even in the back end of the season where you thought you were going to get top 4 and you ended up coming, I want to say it was 5th and Spurs pipped you to it. And at that time, I understood a lot of people saying he's got to go. And I remember we did a show and I read out an apology to you and I said you were going to get top 4. From that point onwards, he's got you guys competing for titles up near the top of the league. You've qualified with one game to spare in the Champions League, and he has progressed you forward. Now, that's how you learn. I've looked at that situation. I don't see a similarity. Of course, there are similarities, but I don't see a close enough comparison between those two situations because what I felt Arsenal were doing, and I learned this with hindsight. So this was me being educated on job, watching these things happen. And for the first time in my life, because of what I now do on the Terrace, I was watching other football clubs a lot closer and having daily and weekly and monthly discussions with fans, reading more on other clubs. What I now look back and see with Arsenal is you were clearing players out and you were changing things behind the scenes from pretty much from the start of Mikel Arteta. Josh might have come in just after he joined. Was it after he joined that Josh came in or before? Was it just after?
Josh was there around
about the same time. It was similar time, right? Yeah, around the same time.
We did, however, and then you're saying you can't see any similarities or a few, or not many, yeah, right? Our owners were poor, not spending any money. Yeah, didn't really back Unai Emery to the high heavens. Before that, Wenger was in his job for 20 odd years, and especially the last 5 were a disgrace, right? But we got rid of him. We brought in Unai Emery. We had a new director of football, technical director. Sven Mislintat and Ralstonelli were there. Vinay was there. Vinay then got promoted to CEO. He's now leaving in the summer. But we slowly, after Mikel came in, slowly got rid of board members, changed the recruitment team, changed the board level, changed the personnel on the pitch, got rid of the toxic and negative players on top money that were apparently a bad influence in the dressing room. The Aubameyangs, Guendouzi went, apparently he was one. We had Mustafi, Kolasinac go, Socrates leaving, getting rid of all the dead wood. Bringing in players that weren't very good. The Pablo Maris, the Cedric Suarez's, players like that. Nuno Tavares, players like him. We've signed Runnison, Matt Ryan, players like this, which is on par with some of the signings you've made. Your backroom staff is likely to change now upstairs, in the board level, which is what we did. But you can't do it all in one night. Rome weren't built in a day, which is what we kept getting told. We have to strip it back. We're a negative, toxic football club that is in the doldrums, and we're a bigger club than where our positions are showing us, and we need to strip it back. We then bring in Mikel Arteta. This is all happening while Mikel's there. We finished 18 months into his tenure with an FA Cup and an 8th place finish, right?
So can I stop you for a second? Let me ask you a question on that, Lee. Let me ask you a question. So in all those changes you're talking about, how much of that happened before he came in and within the first few months, 6 months or so of him being your manager? How much of that will happen?
Ralstonelli was gone way quick. I think Ralstonelli was gone as soon as Arteta got there. Okay. As soon as he got there, I don't know the exact date. And the reason I ask is this, and I understand there are similarities, but when I look at the situations, one we're doing with hindsight, we know the outcome to where we are now. The other, we're looking into the future. So it's a lot, as you all know, it's easy to predict the results of football matches that have happened rather than predicting what's going to happen in the future. But for me, not enough change has happened as I believed it may, well, not enough changes happened in the last 18 months internally at the club for me to have faith that with the new people coming in, this manager can turn it around. We haven't changed enough. And we know that now based on what's happening. What's happening now has happened to all the previous managers. And I think it's tarnished him. And I think the rot has set in. And for me personally, that's the biggest reason why I would move him on. Now, there was a time, like with a lot of Arsenal fans, where I looked at Arteta and said, I don't see how he gets out of this. I don't see how he turns it round. And he has done. Then you sit there and listen to it, and not so much yourself, because I know you're not the biggest fan of Arteta and what you're doing at your football club. But then you realize, well, a lot of changes were happening at the same time as him coming in. If, for instance, Ten Hag came in and within a month, the board that we currently have was being moved out. The recruitment team was changing. The Sir Jim Ratcliffe's new people were all coming in at similar times, and they were changing how we operated. One, I don't think we'd be in this situation now. And two, I'd have more faith in him. But listening to what he said, the results that we have, the falling out with the players, who I've still got no faith that we're going to move them on. And we still don't know that we're going to move in the right direction with Sir Jim coming in. A lot of the people that don't like when Arteta got there, was Mesut Ozil going to be leaving the club? Was Aubameyang going to be leaving the club? How are we getting players out on top dollar?
So Lee, the difference in this situation is this: we now know what's happened at Arsenal. I don't know what's going to happen at Man United. I see the situations as different. We're at different ends of the timeline in these scenarios, so my thoughts and feelings are different.
Not, are we?
Of course, we're at a different scenario.
How are we at different ends of the timeline? After I've given you an exact update on 18 months of Arteta in the job and where we were and what we were doing,
but we know where
we were and what we were doing.
You're not asking me,
you were statistically outperforming what Arteta was doing in the same time scale.
I understand that, but of course, we're at different stages. We now know where Arteta has got to. We still know how much further he needs to go.
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
No, I'm not. If you let me finish my point. I get what you're coming from. We're looking at both situations at that stage, but 18 months into Mikel Arteta's tenure, I believe that he should go. So you now saying was I right to think Arteta should go or wrong to think he should go? 18 months in.
I want him out anyway. So
you agree? No, I'm not asking the wrong person. I'm trying to make you understand. But based on what we've learned since, again, it doesn't matter to me we stays. My mind has changed. However, with Ten Hag, like I've already said, if he turns it round and does a brilliant job and gets us back into title races, I'll hold my hands up and say we were right not to get rid of him. I don't have an agenda. But based on what we've learned, what we know, I don't think he will. So
can I just jump in there quickly?
The situation is different because they're at different stages of the process.
Yeah, but at the same stage,
different situation.